What's going on, Ravens flock? This is Sam Njoku, host of the Ravens Talk podcast. The coordinators finally speak, and with it, new excitement returns to the Baltimore Ravens fandom.
One coordinator, Declan Doyle, was saying, "Hey, who's showing up for OTAs to win a championship?" I'm Kadri Ismail. We'll talk about it.
And I'm Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. And Jesse Minter, he's embracing the challenge and the expectations that this Baltimore Ravens team has. We'll talk about that and a lot more coming up on the Locked On Ravens Squad show.
Rise and shine. It's the Ravens Squad. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad Show starts now.
What is going on, Ravens flock? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Sam Njoku, Kevin Oestreicher, and Kadri Ismail talking to you about Ravens football here again on Wednesday. We are very excited because the Ravens press conference was a treat. If you don't know, the coordinators, newly minted coordinators for Jesse Minter, had a press conference, spoke with the media, talked all about what their expectations are, their vision for the future. I got a lot more out of this press conference than I usually get from press conferences in the past. So I know a lot of Ravens fans are also very excited about it. We'll talk about Declan Doyle. He spoke about what he expects from this offense, his vision for the offense and expectations that may arise sooner rather than later for a lot of the Ravens players on the football team. We'll talk about Anthony Weaver. Very candid in his statement regarding his, head coaching opportunities, as well as what his role will be for this defense without actually having to call plays. And my personal favorite hire, Anthony Levine, co-cap, the special teams coordinator, newly minted, very enthusiastic about what he will bring to the table. I know a lot of Ravens fans are excited, and a couple of Ravens players, one in particular, actually showed up to the press conference to give us support for the guys. So very much looking forward to the opportunity to discuss this press conference with you and Ravens flock. But first, we'll talk about Declan Doyle, the newly minted offensive coordinator. He will be taking part with the offense. We know Jesse Minter is a defensive-minded head coach. He wanted to bring in an offensive-minded genius, someone with his mindset, his like-mindedness, to come in here and push this offense into new heights. Kevin, you listened to the press conference as well. What are your thoughts about what Declan Doyle had to say?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked what he had to say, and I talked about this a lot on the live show that I did right after the fact, is that it just feels like for all three of these guys, and obviously Doyle being the guru of that offense now, it just feels like the whole coaching staff, at least the three coordinators and Jesse Minter, are all just really on one wavelength here and coordinated. And that's something that Minter said is like he wants to find guys that are, they know their X's and O's, but they know how to build relationships, know to vibe with the players and all that stuff. And I think for Doyle, him being very confident in his system, his experience, what he has brought to the table, he got real on the fact that, that situation in Chicago was good, but like in Baltimore, it's different. It gives him different opportunities and allows him to do different things. Obviously, the main thing being calling plays. But on the other hand, I think that, with his system in Chicago and Ben Johnson's system in Chicago and kind of what they were able to do there, I think there are a lot of things that are easily translatable. And Q and I talked about this morning on Locked On Ravens. He's not just going to pick up the entire Chicago Bears offense and plop it down in Baltimore, and that's going to be what they run. The thing that I loved what Declan Doyle talked about was the fact that they're not going to, have this offense and Lamar's going to have to adapt to it. They're going to build it around Lamar and build it around the skill sets. It's not going to be, hey, you have to learn this offense, whether it fits you or not. There's going to be adaptability, probably trial and error in terms of getting it to work. And that's a little scary considering, this team still, they have high expectations coming into the season, but I'd rather them work on stuff and, hey, you know what, maybe this can work. No, that doesn't necessarily fit. Let's go over here and try this. And that works a lot better, as opposed to them just trying to like brute force their way into trying to do something and it not working. Them just trying to continue to go back to that well. So I think that Declan was really great. I thought all three of them were, but I think Declan was a guy that just hearing him talk and his philosophies, those non-negotiable pillars, which I think were really cool to kind of set that standard. You might see that up in the locker room at some point. Who knows? With the little, because there are some quotes in there from John Harbaugh that are probably going to be taken down now. So maybe that gets replaced with the pillars that Declan Doyle has. And I think he talked about it both on the lounge interview he did with Garrett and Clifton, and then obviously today, where talking about physicality and attention to detail and explosiveness, that it's all just very refreshing to me.
Ooh, just basking in the glow of something new, something fresh, something different. KO is right. Like those pillars will be up on the wall in some form or fashion. The toughness mindset, the idea of the mental toughness, the way he spoke about it, and then the ultimate of how to win, which is the big play element to his pillars. So I think the way they are going now to what do we want to do day one? What does it look like drill to drill? What do we want to do day two, drill to drill? How do we build upon that? I know, Declan is going to have to speak in front of the team. Anthony Weaver has spoken in front of the team. I'm talking about the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball. Both of those guys have done it in some form or fashion. But Anthony Levine, that third phase of the game, I think that's where, for me, I am curious how he's going to be speaking in front of the team. Because you say what you will, I know that, yes, it is an amazing opportunity for him. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, you got to have a fine-tooth comb when it comes to the idea of setting up special teams, because that's critical field position and critical opportunity either to make a big play or give up a big play. And it can change the direction of the game. I'm curious. I liked how he talked about culture. I liked how he kind of was like, hey, this is what we are going to do and why we're going to do it. I'm curious about that. I know what Declan was saying was on point. I know what Anthony Weaver was saying on point. Again, both men have addressed other men in the different locker rooms. How's it going to be with Anthony Levine? That is the excitement that I have when I'm looking at the press conference and the takeaway from it.
Oh yeah, and we can't wait to talk about it later on in the show. I am very excited for Anthony Levine, but you're right. There is a lot of nuances to leading the group of men, to having that understanding of special teams in all facets. And I guess the term co-cap for him gives the Ravens confidence in the fact that he understands special teams fully. But you're right. There's going to be a little room for error in special teams for sure. It's going to be making a break in field position for both of these coordinators on offense and defense. They're going to be leaning a lot on a very inexperienced Anthony Levine to get the job done. Let's hope that they can do it. But as far as Declan Doyle goes, and there's going to be some talk about it. I know, Kevin, later on in your show tomorrow, you'll be addressing it. The OTAs thing. That's what everybody's talking about. The OTAs. He wants these players to be there. I talked about it on my show, Ravens Talk podcast as well, that it's going to be very important for these guys to show up to OTAs. Now, they haven't had since, Todd Monken took over, a new face, a new voice to the offense, but Todd Monken came in and kind of added on to what Greg Roman did. I'm not sure that's going to be the case with Declan Doyle. He spoke about stripping this team on offense down to its bare bones and building a foundation for a new offense they see fit, which caters to the player's skill set, something that I know a lot of Ravens fans are very happy about. But it's going to be one of those situations where you're going to need all hands on deck from the opening practice in April to the last practice before the start of the regular season. Kevin, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important. And for a little spoiler, I had Bruce Cunningham, longtime Ravens PA announcer, back on the show. We had a great conversation, and this is kind of the main thing we talked about. And, Bruce and I are in agreement that, this year in particular, it is going to be very important for as many guys to show up as possible. Now, again, I've said this before. I said it on the show tomorrow, and I'll say it again here. I'm not going to dock anybody for not going to something that is voluntary, right? That it's their choice. It's their decision. But at the end of the day, like, you want as many guys there. And I think it to me, you're talking about last season or 2 years ago with, like, for the offense in particular, year 2 of Todd Monken's system, year 3 of Todd Monken's system, there's a familiarity aspect of it. And you're like, okay, like, I get it. But you still want everybody to be there, at least as many people as possible. Now, in this situation, I think Doyle just got very real on it and is like, look, it is voluntary, but he said, yeah, we'd expect the players to be there. And if you want to win a championship, or you want to say you're going to win a championship and you want to have championship standards, it's going to take work. And he talked about it being able to make improvements and to set themselves up to where they can come back in for training camp and hit the ground running and already have that shared knowledge. And you're not, you're already a little bit ahead of where you would be if, certain guys didn't show up. And again, there was no calling out of any particular player. I think a lot of people thought that Declan's comments were pointed at Lamar Jackson. There was no mention of Lamar Jackson in this answer. It was a message to the team of saying like, hey, this is the standard we want to install here. And this is what we expect. Now, again, expectations versus reality can be different, and these guys aren't required to show up to things that are voluntary. But we did see last season with the Seattle Seahawks. You guys want to guess what their attendance number was for OTAs? 100%. 100% of players showed up for at least one day of OTAs. And, there are certain levels of like, does this vet need OTAs? Does that vet need OTAs? It's different, even when it's year 2 of a system versus year 1. But I think year 1, it's very important just to be able to get an understanding of one another, the players, the coaches, getting guys acclimated. And plus, hey, you're probably going to bring in a lot of O-linemen as well, getting those guys acclimated early on, some of the free agents and the new guys. Like, there's a lot of benefit to it. But again, it is voluntary. They're not required to show up. But again, I believe it would be good if as many people as possible did.
I mean, that's a given, but come on, like the elephant in the room is Lamar Jackson. I know I've attended the last, 3 seasons of OTAs as well as training camp. KO and I, obviously last year, Sam, you, I, and KO all talked ad nauseum about, the different OTAs. When we first started our squad show, we had training camps and all those things. And I can tell you the year prior where John Harbaugh wanted to close the practice, but Lamar wasn't there. And so what they tried to do is figure it out. In the figuring it out element of it all, they opened up practice. And so now people were trying to report on, oh, who's all here? Oh, who's not here? Oh, Lamar's not here? And so then all of a sudden, it gets, the rumblings out into the sports verse of the Ethernet and whatever other universe you want to call. But on planet 616, when Lamar wasn't here, everybody was like, oh my God, he's not here. And so he came in. And so I'm saying that, let's be real, everybody is going to be here, but it's critical that Lamar Jackson is in the building. You want to set the tone to be a leader. Not saying that he's not. Don't get all twisted and everybody. Why do I qualify every single time? But I'm going to qualify for the people who got cotton in their ears and, next thing you know, they pull it out and they got all that earwax. And then they're like, oh, my God, did you hear what Humphrey said? No. I'm saying the team collectively, if you want to win, the leaders on the team, a.k.a. the Kyle Hamiltons, the Roquans, the Lamars, the Ronnie Stanleys, the Derrick Henrys, they need to all be there. But yes, numero uno on top of the list is Lamar Jackson.
1,000% agree with you. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that, definitely, he even pointed out the leaders need to be there as well. And, voluntary practice for me, especially with this team, the shortcomings they had in the 2025 season, voluntary doesn't mean much to me. I mean, you don't sign a contract to win a championship, but it's not mandatory to win a championship, but you got to do the work to win a championship. And that's what Declan Doyle talked about. You got to be there at OTAs to win a championship. I mean, obviously, if you're not at OTAs, you're not automatically disqualified for winning a championship. That's not what I'm saying. But you have a greater chance to win, in my opinion, if you're on the same page. That has not been the case with Lamar Jackson and certain receivers in the past. Rashod Bateman, one in particular. Get going with this offense. You wanted to bring in a new guy to make the offense the way you want it to look. This is your opportunity. I mean, this is a great chance to get your voice heard. Put the thoughts in Declan Doyle's ear early about what you want this offense to look like, not just via Zoom call, not just via text. Get out there, practice with your guys. So very good to hear you say that, Q, because, you play, what OTAs are about. It's not, a huge deal practice-wise. You're not installing what you're going to do in week 1 doing OTAs, but I think it's a good idea to be there. So I think hopefully they are there. 100% attendance sounds really good to me, Kevin. seems like an avenue to win a championship. Let's just hope it gets done. It's a lot about nothing right now, but as we creep closer to those voluntary practices, I'm sure this will come up later on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about Anthony Weaver. Very much, we talk about leadership. He exudes that for sure. I think he's going to be a head coach in this league sooner rather than later. But first, he makes a stop as DC for the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk about what he said during this press conference next here on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA feature, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love features this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick cash, but they could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use Profit Boost on an NBA feature and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play a game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We are back here, Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Myself, KO, and Q talking Ravens football here in the offseason, making it known that we are going to be here all offseason long, twice a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you like and subscribe to the show so you get those notifications when we are on the air. You also catch the Locked On Ravens podcast with Kevin Oestreicher twice a day. That's right, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Maybe some extra content during the weekends, depending on the headlines, but you're guaranteed 2 shows a day, Monday through Friday. So you'll get your daily dose, double daily dose of Ravens content for sure. Also want to let you know, want to thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. And thank you for making it Locked On, the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go ahead and check out our new Everydayers Club with Kevin. Access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Ravens, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You get one-on-one texting with this, special all-access episodes of the Locked On Ravens. So make sure you go to the link provided right now in the show notes. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more for sure, as the Everydayers Club is another way to get access to Ravens content with Kevin and the Locked On Ravens podcast. Anthony Weaver, DC officially of the Baltimore Ravens. I mentioned this way back when it was first announced. The Ravens righted a wrong here, getting Anthony Weaver into the building as the new DC. He was very candid with his remarks about the process of becoming a head coach, falling short of that expectation, but making it known that this is no consolation prize to be the Ravens DC, teaming up with Jesse Minter to make this defense what it once was, is #1 on his priority list here, to be a leader and having this role. Kevin, what are your thoughts about what you heard from Anthony Weaver during this press conference?
I think it's just so cool every time that Anthony Weaver speaks about the Ravens, how much respect he has for the organization and how just genuine his love for the city of Baltimore and the Ravens is. I mean, you heard it this time around too, where, he was very real about the fact that it's disappointed he didn't get a head coaching job. He said that on the lounge as well as during his press conference today. But again, made it clear that this wasn't a consolation prize and that working with Jesse Minter and being a part of the organization is something that, he truly values and is excited for it. And I thought it was funny when he was talking about, because he was asked about the fourth quarter leads and stuff, and he was like, it's not just this flip or this switch that flips. If that's the case, what were you doing for the first 3 quarters, right? It was like, yeah, okay. It's more about stuff slipping with fundamentals or other things along those lines. And I thought that was a funny answer, but it's true about if you're not bringing that same intensity for all 4 quarters and you're just all right, you're flipping a switch and something happens, you're probably not playing the game the right way. At least that was my interpretation of it. So I think that Weaver is someone that, I think you heard confidence from all these guys when they spoke, but I think Weaver, he exudes that calm confidence, and that answer for him. If you listen to the lounge interview where he's the 60 minutes of hell, that was those Nolan Richardson Arkansas basketball teams. And, he has a clear, every coach in their own way on Wednesday set a standard for their group, whether it was Jesse as the head coach, Declan, Anthony Senior. And I think that what Weaver's message is they want to get back to the standard. It's like what Marlon Humphrey talked about last season. You know, they want to get back to the standard of 2000 Ravens football, and that defense, you might know something about that. I'm not sure though. But
A little bit.
yeah, at the end of the day, like that is the standard. The Ravens defense. That is what this team has been built on for their existence. And you know, Lamar Jackson's come in. He's kind of redefined the standard on offense for them, but this has always been a defensive football team. And last year, it felt gross. Like it just felt like a gross defensive year for Baltimore's last season. I think Weaver brings that intensity, that fire, and that passion that I think a lot of guys are going to buy into. And he mentioned, you know, his relationship with Travis Jones and Nnamdi Madubuike, you know, even guys that aren't in the building anymore, like Calais Campbell, et cetera. Like, I think that he is a player's guy. He's a guy that can relate to them, already has good relationships. And I think that already gives him a head start in this situation. And I think that's a really big deal.
You know, it's so interesting when he brought up the 2000 Ravens team and he was saying, like, look, what am I here for? Like, what am I coaching? Like, is it just because of my praise of who I am? Or is it because I want to serve and help those guys, you know, achieve the feat of being in that select company, that rarefied air of Super Bowl champion? I'm looking at my walls here in my facility where I do my podcast with you guys. And yeah, like behind me is my Super Bowl experience jersey and some of the credentials and some of the through the playoffs, the game programs that were sitting in on our chairs that we went to Baltimore, PSI Net Stadium. Then we go ahead and traverse across the land to Tennessee, whoop up on them, traverse all the way across the country, whoop up on them in Oakland, and then obviously traverse on down to Tampa Bay and crown ourselves 34-7. And man, you're that of legend. When I look at the coaching staff and recognize there are a lot of coaches that became head coaches off of that staff, it's due to the fact that they set a standard of excellence. But what I loved about it, it was like there was this unspoken chemistry, this like togetherness, this like, yo, we're doing this. I get that vibe from Anthony Weaver. Yeah, I'm a competitor. Yeah, I want to go ahead and do what I want to do. But at the same time, I know that this job is a coveted job, being the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. I know there's a standard of excellence for the decades that it's been in existence. And then at the same time, yeah, we got a really good mother of pearl quarterback in Lamar Jackson that can help us get over the proverbial hump of getting to and winning the championship. And so if there's any opportunity to jump on board, let me jump on board. He did that. Anthony Weaver is now the coordinator that won't be calling plays, but will be setting up the defense. And if you look at Marvin Lewis, homeboy had 3 guys on his staff. Yeah, technically he had 3 guys on his defensive staff that turned into head coaches. So more power to you, Anthony, and more power to Jesse Minter in hiring him and having the foresight to do so.
Yeah, I have the utmost faith in Anthony Weaver for sure. I've gone on record, and I'll say it again, he will be a head coach in this league, and a really good one. You could tell just off the little bit we got from the press conference that he's definitely fired up, and he has a great mindset when it comes to coaching these players in the NFL. And it was very interesting also that Jesse Minter said during the press conference in relation to Anthony Weaver, he stated that he wants Anthony Weaver and himself to work together to make a new age way to play like a Raven. One more note to the fact that this will be a different team, a different culture than the one that we've seen the past 18 years with John Harbaugh and company. New culture, new fit. Everything just seems new, and new is always good. But it's also nice to see and, hear from these guys and make sure that it's not just the new feeling that will get Ravens fans excited, but the work that these coaching staff will put in to make sure that this team is ready to go. Are you concerned, Kevin, that this defense, even with Jesse Minter, will need an outside force like a Max Crosby, some pass rusher like a Bradley Chubb that we talked about earlier to come in. Anthony Weaver made it very clear. We got pass rushers on the team currently that can get the job done. Of course, he noted that Nnamdi Madubuike's loss was huge, but he noted that, hey, we got the pass rushers in here to do it. Jesse Minter also mentioned what he had to do to get it off the old way going with those sacks, just making it him doing what he knows without having to ask him to do too much. Seems like this team's on the right track, but do you think even with all that, they should get some more pass rushing help here?
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. I mean, look, I think it's the right thing to say, and I don't think Weaver is lying when he says that he does have confidence in his guys, and there are pass rushers on this team, but they need more. They need somebody else. And look, part of it is just of having enough depth and enough options where, you know, I'm cool with like saying, hey, I think Mike Green could really break out in year 2. Or, you know, I think Travis Jones with Anthony Weaver at the helm on that defense can really take that next step that maybe Nnamdi had in 2023. Maybe that can be Travis this year. But there's also possibilities that doesn't happen and you're back to square one of, well, all right, Mike Green didn't break out and Travis Jones is still a solid player, but he's not like the Nnamdi of 2023. And all of a sudden you're like, well, man, if we had another guy that could really help us out. And plus, I mean, part of the thing with Odafe and his situation is something that, you know, Jesse did mention is a lot of, they gave him more confidence in certain situations. They opened things up for him a little bit, but he also had guys like Thule and Khalil Mack where it was impossible to give away the attention that they were giving to him in Baltimore at times because of the fact that, well, that you had to stop so many other guys. And I think for Baltimore, you know, again, whether it's a Max Crosby, I know Sam has banned that name on this show, but if it's Max Crosby or a guy like Hendrickson or Bradley Chubb, or maybe it is Khalil Mack, like, I just think you need more options. And there's no harm in that. Again, if you get guys on, whether it is the big acquisition and you put a ton of capital into that and a ton of assets, or if it's a couple of smaller guys or rookies or whatnot, the problem for Baltimore last year is they just didn't have options, and the guys they were relying on just, you know, whether it be in the framework of that defense or whatever, didn't step up. And I think that two things can be true, which is I expect under the framework of a Jesse Minter / Anthony Weaver defense that everybody on the roster is naturally going to get a bump in production because that's what we saw in Los Angeles. But at the same time, there also does need to be an addition or two from the outside because you want to give yourselves as many options as possible and it's like as many good options as possible too. Make sure that you have guys you can rotate in and out, that offensive linemen have to worry about in every play. It's like, man, you know, just got done blocking Trey Hendrickson. Oh, here comes Mike Green on third down. Oh man, here we go. Like, you know, you want those options, that rotation. So I definitely think that the defense has guys already that will get improved stats because of the new situation, but also acknowledge that they do need more.
I like Dozy Dopes, Chubb, Dre Jones, T-Rob, and Mike Green will feed families.
Yeah.
So that kind of is where KO is saying, look, you need a rotation. And you're absolutely right. You need some dudes. Like, look at the Houston Texans. Their offense was horrible. Can I do my Charles Barkley impersonation? Terrible. I mean, they were just that bad. And their defense was just like suffocating. But they were rotating guys in and out, suffocating. Denver's defense, literally, they're sitting there still scratching their head. How did we not win this game? Because we totally suffocated Drake May's offense. And it was one play that all of a sudden he got, I shouldn't say lucky on, but they felt that he got lucky on. D-line was just suffocating. You know, you look at Seattle, and they're one of the all-times. Now they're hoisting up the Lombardi as an all-time. Why? Because of what you just said. They got a rotation. That rotation, and you got some dogs. My goodness. It's unrelenting. I think you just didn't have that. I mean, okay, in my mind, Nnamdi Madubuike is not coming back through that door. Time to move on. Let's go out there and get some dudes. What does that look like via the draft and via free agency? And how do you cultivate the guys that you got as well? That is the bottom line.
Yep, it sure is. I am with you there. I'm not going to hang that hat on the possibility of Nnamdi Madubuike coming back. you got to look towards the future regardless. Peter Woods seems pretty enticing at number 14, but regardless of where they go here, they need to do some things to improve this pass rush. It's not just going to be coming in here and changing the coaching staff. You need some dogs in the building, and they need to do their due diligence, Eric DeCosta especially, to make that happen. When we come back, we'll talk about Anthony Levine. He's now the captain of the special teams unit entirely as a coach, not just as a player. He is the new special teams coordinator. We'll talk about what he said in the press conference and what we can look forward to from this unit in 2026 next on the Locked On Ravens Squad. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That's quo.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Ravens Squad show. Again, we're here twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time for your viewing pleasure. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're currently viewing on YouTube or after the show is aired. And you can also catch us wherever you get your podcast. Give us 5 stars. Tell the Ravens fans about us, what we're doing here. You can also catch Kevin twice a day on the Locked On Ravens podcast, giving you news Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on when those shows aired. So if you want more Ravens news coverage, you want more Ravens news, more Ravens content, Kevin is where you go to get all of that. So much appreciated for you guys who continue to tune in and show support for the channel. Now, Anthony Levine, a fan favorite. Everybody knows what he did for special teams as a player. He is now the new special teams coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. Jesse Minter gone on record and called him the face of special teams. So he is coming here to really bring enthusiasm, and he brought some enthusiasm to his press conference. Kevin, you got a chance to listen in on that press conference. And Anthony, what were your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't talk as much as the other two guys, but I just think the main thing, and I really liked that, I like Jesse's message about Anthony, where like he's going to be the guy there and use him. He said he's the face of Baltimore special teams, which I thought was really, really cool. And, this is something that Nick talked to us about. And when we had him on the show talking about Anthony Levine, is that he's a guy that's been there. He's done that. He has relationships within the building. But for example, there was a lot made about Keandre Jackson being there for this press conference today and showing support to Anthony Levine. I mean, if I'm a young player, if I'm undrafted or a later round guy and looking to carve out a career for myself and trying to find the ropes on how to do that, there's not a guy that I would want more as my coach than Anthony Levine, because of the fact that he did it himself and he's been a part of this organization. He went to Tennessee for a couple of years as an assistant, got experience there, came back as an assistant. I mean, I think it's really cool, the journey, and he was very appreciative. I mean, shouted out guys, Jamil McClain was someone he mentioned. Marcus Peters also, he talked about, there are guys that he thanked mentioned along this journey that he has taken to get to this point. And even talked about Jesse a little bit and said that, and I think, again, it's the mindset, because like Nick kind of told us, Levine's a more old school type of guy. You earn his respect, and that's something that Nick really valued when it happened to him. He told us that story. But in terms of Jesse, Anthony Levine said, cool, you did a great job of connecting with us. He also told us what we needed to hear, not what we wanted to hear. I think that's, again, the culture that Jesse is installing here, where it's like, okay, we're all trying to win championships and nobody's perfect. There are going to be things that you're great at and things that you're not. And the things that you're not, we're going to tell you that you're not, so you can improve on those, instead of just being like, yeah, good job, that's great. And that was what's so frustrating about last season, is like we were all seeing the tape. We were all seeing guys not playing well. And it felt like the messaging, at least what it was to the media, was, oh, no, those guys are good. I thought it was good. And that's just not what it should be. It should be, hey, these guys, they're doing this well, but it's not up to the standard. And you know, I'm not calling for these coaches to come up on the podium every single day and just bash their guys. I mean, that's not realistic, and that's not what you should do. But, you know, those honest and real conversations have to happen. And look, I'm sure they did happen under John Harbaugh. I'm not saying that was the case, but at some point, I just think it's a culture shift, and Minter was really trying to find guys that aligned with that. And I think it means a lot that Levine was one of the few holdovers from John Harbaugh's staff. And I think part of that probably did go back to the relationship where Levine was in that DB room with Minter and how those two guys maybe operated together in the experience that Levine has gathered up. So I'm really pumped for Anthony Levine. And I think that, you know, he's a guy that a lot of people are excited about, myself included.
I think if you recognize, again, as I said in the early portion of the show, the three phases of the game, that big plays happen more on special teams than they do in the other two phases of the game. I think for Anthony Levine, you know, one of the takeaways, just the presentation of going up there in front of the people. Wasn't a guy that was in front of the media very often, if at all, during his time as a player, and also from a coach aspect of things. I know, you know, doggone Ravens Live YouTube channel was up in arms, ready to strangle whomever cut him off in his talk, which I thought was really cool because it just shows, you know, it just shows the commitment and loyalty, and I think they also respect, you know, what he's going to do. I'm excited to see, you know, what is it that he can bring, you know, some of the nuances that the returners are going to be able to see. The cover guys are going to be able to execute the overall team chemistry. And I mean, technically, you're picking players. There are some players that play both ways, and they play special teams. There are some players that just special teams. That's how they're going to make their living. And I think for Anthony, he's going to be able to pick out those key special teams guys that, yo, when you out there, we know we're going to depend upon you. And I think the return and the restoration to excellence is going to be there because of Anthony Levine. Cut me off, somebody, quickly.
Nope. There will be no exit music, no cutting off. Let you get your Q ran on. But you're right. I think that it's going to be Anthony Levine's job to make sure that everything's under control here. Again, the offense starting position is only as good as what the special teams does. What the defense is able to do with field position is only as well as what the special teams is able to do. So it is a huge portion. And as you mentioned, big plays happen more often in the special teams unit than anywhere else, more consistently. So it's going to be a big job for Anthony Levine. But to your point, he's going to be looking for dogs to come in and kind of be that guy to come in and be enthusiastic about being on special teams. One of those players, Keondae Jackson, was actually at the press conference, flew out, notified Anthony Levine that he'd be there. What does that mean to you, Q, when you see guys already, you know, before the season's already started, coming in and showing support for a guy like Anthony Levine?
Well, it's not showing support. It's just showing trust. Like there's a relationship there. What has Jesse Minter been talking about and harping on for the longest time? Relationship. Building. Okay, this is just another avenue of confirmation that Anthony Levine is your guy when it comes to special teams. I mean, he's going to be addressing the whole team. The defensive coordinator is going to be addressing the defensive side of football. The offensive coordinator is going to be addressing the offensive side of football. He's going to be addressing O-line, D-line, receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, corners, linebackers. He's going to be addressing the entire squad. So, yeah, it's the relationship building. And it's good that he's going to be old school. I've had some really cool special teams coaches in my day, and there's some that, you know, they were full of hot air and they thought they were all that. They just had some amazingly talented returners that made them look good. But then there were some other guys that were extremely talented as far as getting schemes put together and guys had an excitement and an expectation. And I think Anthony Levine is going to bring and restore that excitement and that expectation of excellence to the special teams squad.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes along the same lines I was talking about earlier, where there's a lot of excitement about Levine coming in and establishing his own unit there. He was a part of that unit, and I thought that Levine should have brought back in Albert McClellan as his assistant to have the cap and co-cap come back together. I don't even know what Albert McClellan is up to these days, but it would have been a fun story. But again, like it's the experience that he had in the NFL, the players that he learned from, and the role he was able to establish. A guy like Keandre, I'm sure, is looking at that and being like, man, like, yeah, defense is awesome, which, by the way, Anthony Levine played a bit of dimebacker for the Ravens and had key plays and turnovers. Again, this is not just Levine was 100% snaps on special teams and nothing else. I mean, he established himself as a contributor on that defense. It wasn't a huge role, but it was a role. And so I think Keandre looks at that for sure and is like, hey, if I can have the career that Anthony Levine did, that's a good career. You're a special teams ace. You have moments on defense. And I think that for Keandre and like you mentioned, a lot of those other positions, special teams, with Levine and the leadership that he was able to establish as a player, him speaking to the team, he already has a leg up in that category. Where I think with guys like Weaver and guys like Levine being out there on that field and the connection with the players means a lot. Now, again, that's not saying that Declan Doyle is, a step behind, but I think there's just based off of what I've seen, there's more worry about Declan Doyle and, can he command the room as opposed to like, I think, Weaver can, and people are pretty confident Levine can, especially with the relationships. And I think Doyle can as well, but it's different experiences, right? With Doyle versus a Weaver and Levine. So I'm excited for all these guys, but I think Levine is super intriguing to me. And for a special teams unit that, we have known for years, that's been the Ravens' bread and butter. I think that even with John Harbaugh gone and that special team stuff, there were still moments and times and seasons where you're thinking, all right, this doesn't feel like the Ravens special teams. I'm hoping that Anthony Levine can restore that to a bit more of a consistent level this season.
We got a little bit of time before we get to the next break. Let's piggyback off of what you said, Kevin, in regards to Declan Doyle, because you're right. Anthony Levine does bring a certain level of a leadership of trust, and Anthony Weaver, he just exudes leadership. I mean, he's everything that you'd expect from a leader in terms of outward appearance. And Declan Doyle, definitely more mature than the 29-year-old I thought I'd see. But you're right. He is going to have some difficulties, perhaps commanding the room with big time personalities like Lamar, like Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers for sure. Are you concerned about that as a Ravens fan, seeing a guy like Declan Doyle having to come in and command that level of personality and also try their best to right the ship of what was a pretty disappointing 25 campaign?
I mean, I guess there's a little bit of concern, but at the end of the day, just like Declan Doyle feels confident in his experience, I do too. That's something a lot of people talked about. Q and I talked about that. It's just like, I don't think it necessarily matters the age of a guy as long as he knows his stuff. I think that he'll be able to earn the respect of his players, and I think the players will be able to earn the respect of Declan Doyle. Again, like Doyle made it very clear over the course of his press conference and over the course of his interviews, it's a two-way street, right? Where that trust is going to be established both between Lamar and Declan Doyle and Lamar. It's going to be a two-way street where they're going to figure out each other, get to know each other, understand what makes each of them tick. Like there are a lot of different avenues for them to have a successful relationship. And I think for Declan Doyle, there is a lot of the like, okay, he's never been in this spot before. How is he going to adapt and react? Is that moment where the Ravens need something really big to happen and Declan Doyle hasn't experienced calling a play in that environment before in an NFL game? Is that going to come back to bite him? It's stuff we've gone through before with Zach Orr. But I've told myself that, look, Zach Orr he wasn't ready, and that's okay. I think Declan Doyle, he is ready for this opportunity. Of course, that doesn't mean it's going to go well. We're not going to know until it all starts, but I have a lot of confidence that it will. Nothing's set in stone until you go out on that field and you play. I mean, Declan Doyle's not playing, but the players are playing. Declan Doyle's calling the plays. I think it'll be okay, but I do understand the concern because it is a new situation, but I have confidence in him.
Dude has been coaching for quite a long time. He's made that abundantly clear. He's made that abundantly clear that he's been one of the youngest guys in the room. So that being said, he knows he has to prepare himself, which he did. And I know from his time in Chicago that, in full disclosure, his father was a GA, grad assistant on the Syracuse football team my senior year. So I know him. And I think in his mind, Declan's mind, I love how he said it in his press conference that I've been around this football thing my entire life. I've seen and done and experienced. And he's had moments last year in some intense moments of how to make things happen and develop game plans and all that. So I think he's more than ready. I just think that it's a novelty that he's as young as he is, and we're used to the old man and John Harbaugh. I guess John's not unk status; he's OG status. And what we talking about with you can't Declan can't be. He's got to be one of your boys. He's got to be what's up? So he can't definitely be unk. He can't definitely be OG. So he's one of your boys. But I think at the same time, one of your boys, let's be real, when the pressure hits, he's gonna be okay because he's faced the pressure. Did he face the pressure in the past? That's what matters the most, and that's all that matters. And he has done that. Period. End of discussion.
Yep, I agree completely. I think, if I'm being honest, the person I'm least concerned with is Declan Doyle. I think he is the one where I'm most confident he is going to come in there and get the job done because we've seen him do it. We've seen him do it from a OC standpoint in Chicago. He didn't call plays, but he did pretty much everything else. And he mentioned it during the press conference. Most of the work that needs to be done to really affect the game happens prior to the start of the game. So all of the preparation, analyzing a film happens. And he did all that with Chicago, had a lot of success, and he's had experience with Sean Payton before. And, I'm just not worried about it. I think that he's going to collaborate with the players well, which is a bonus. And I think he's going to do fantastic. I think it was a heck of a hire, and I expect big things. My only concern for Declan Doyle is that he's not going to be the OC for very long. I think he's going to do too well and go out there and be the next Sean McVay somewhere else. But in the meantime, we're going to enjoy him, and I think that the Ravens are in a really good spot with the OC here in Baltimore. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about some players that will need to help Declan Doyle get to where he needs to be in the term of free agency. There's a guy or two that we know will be available now for the Ravens, and we may want to take a closer look at this guy as we get ready for the start of the free agency period. We'll discuss it next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all the boxes. Listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Again, we are here twice a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with Ravens news throughout the offseason, leading up to the regular season, where hopefully the Ravens begin the campaign for a championship. You can also catch Kevin on the Locked On Ravens podcast twice a day at 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. talking Ravens football. The news doesn't stop. The content doesn't stop. So if you're interested in more Ravens content, be sure to tune in for his channel, his show, twice a day, giving you Ravens content Monday through Friday. Now, the Ravens are, of course, getting set for the free agency period. Still a lot of work to do, getting the extension done with Lamar Jackson, trying to bring Tyler Linderbaum back. But we all know one of the major reasons for this Ravens team failing to reach the postseason in 2025 was the play of the offensive line, most notably Daniel Falele, or as Q likes to call him, Roly Polioli, and Angie Voorhees. Both of those guys failed to make an impact and probably did the opposite in terms of production here. Tyler Linderbaum, still a question mark whether or not he returns, which makes it even more imperative for the Ravens to make some moves in order to kind of fix the play of this offensive line. One player in particular, Cleveland Brown, I guess you can call him a former Cleveland Brown, Wyatt Teller, announced on Instagram that he will not be returning to the Cleveland Browns and will be looking onward to free agency. Kevin, now that you see that Wyatt Teller could be a possible attraction, acquired talent for the Ravens, are you excited for it? Do you think he will make a good fit for this team? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like it a lot. There are a lot of those vet guys that make a lot of sense for the Ravens. Joe Bitonio in Cleveland's another guy that makes a lot of sense. You could also maybe look to a former Raven and Kevin Zeitler if he plays for another year. It's possible. But Teller is somebody that, has been really good for a while. He's dealt with injuries the past couple of seasons, hasn't played a full year in a couple of years. But I think that he'd be a really solid option for them. I mean, he's a 3-time Pro Bowler and 2-time All-Pro. So the pedigree is there for him. He's 31 right now. I still think he has a couple of good years left in the tank. And he's been one of those guys that's been like, him and Bitonio have been like two of the really big bright spots in all those miserable years in Cleveland. So I'd be really excited about Teller coming to Baltimore if that's what they end up going with. Again, the offensive line market is just weird in free agency where there aren't a lot of good ones that hit the market. I mean, Linderbaum could be one of those guys, but a lot of those guys are either re-signed by their old teams or traded. So maybe a trade is something that the Ravens look at, but I think that there are enough solid veteran options where if you are signing a guy like Teller and then you want to go with a competition between Voorhees and Emory Jones and maybe a draft a guard in the first or second or third round or whatever, I'm okay with that as long as you also adjust the other needs on your roster. But I think getting a veteran guard in the building is going to be of utmost importance. And I think Teller, especially after announcing the news he's not coming back to Cleveland, I think that'd be perfect.
I mean, it definitely will be in a scenario where you can say, okay, cool. We got an opportunity to figure out his scheme. And that's where I think Dwayne Ledford, I mean, we quote unquote hear it and say it all the time. Put on the tape, put on the tape, put on the tape. Well, putting on the tape means that does this guy fit our scheme? And I know that the way it looks like his opportunity to be in a more functional scheme is going to greatly help him. Whether or not it's with the Ravens remains to be seen. I think Roly Polioli don't even dare even contemplate bringing him back. Don't talk to him and say his name. I've never, ever seen in the history of man the home team, when you're being introduced, that one player gets booed as loud as Roly Polioli did last season. Consistently. I've never seen that. I mean, it's crazy. So, in my mind, I just sneezed out all the nastiness and welcomed in a breath of fresh air. Cleansing breath. I feel better now because Roly Polioli ain't coming through that door. But if it is a guy like a Zeitler too, like that's like a good foundation piece that I think would be intriguing to me because he would be that more power, inside zone, run scheme type guy, those duo blocks. I don't know if he would be a good, just get out there and wide zone scheme for Dwayne Ledford. So I'd be curious to see as far as Zeitler. I know you said that, there's just that a guy that might be potentially out there if he plays another season. But I'd just be curious as far as his scheme and his mobility, if in fact they did mesh together and then put him out on the field.
Now, let's say Tyler Linderbaum doesn't return. Is there a guy out there who you think could come in and be that replacement, Kevin? I think McGovern, the Bills center, is available potentially as an option. Would that be an okay scenario? Cade Mays, I think, from the Panthers also is an option. There's a couple of centers out there, but how big of a disaster would it be if the Ravens were unable to retain Tyler Linderbaum?
I mean, it'd definitely be a big disaster. And the stuff with Linderbaum now is, Creed Humphrey with the 18 mil per season. Linderbaum, I mean, based off everything that's being said, I mean, he's going to get 20s, and it's not even close in terms of per season, which, again, the Ravens have been looking for a franchise center for the last handful of seasons. They finally get a guy in the building, and to let him leave would be pretty catastrophic, especially because, McGovern, I guess, would be an option. But other than that, it'd have to be kind of a cheaper option. And Linderbaum didn't look as good as we know that he can look. I think part of that is because of the guys he was playing next to. So I think there's obviously added context in that. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to take a risk in doing that, then you can. But the thing is, I mean, if he hits free agency, that price, like we've talked about, is going to go up, 22, 23, 24. And then that's the point where I just don't think you bring him back if you're the Ravens. So, I mean, do you bring in like an Austin Corbett from Carolina, or you mentioned Mays, one of those guys, Pochich from Cleveland? I mean, their entire line is, I think, getting free agency at this point, all these guys on the market. But I just, I mean, I would hope that the order of operations here is obviously Lamar's contract getting done and then Linderbaum being re-signed. But, kind of like what we've talked about with Stanley, I don't think they would have brought him back if he hit free agency, because that price was going to go way up if he hit free agency. I think it's the same thing with Linderbaum.
Yeah, I think big picture wise, the Lamar Jackson extension is going to free up cap space. And I guess the report of what Patrick Mahomes freeing up some 40 plus million in cap space that allows for the Kansas City Chiefs to go out there and now put their 2 cents into acquiring talent for their team. And they did it kind of early too. So they're going to be like coming on up into the flow of, we ready to go. Let's do this from a free agency standpoint. I'm hoping that as much as we're talking about it, takes two to tango. And in this particular case, we, the fan base, are sitting there like, come on, Lamar, and come on, Eric Costa, let's get a deal done, similar to the way the Kansas City Chiefs were sitting there and they got a deal done with their franchise guy. And now there is a heck of a lot more opportunity for them to be creative in either signing their own guys and or going out and being aggressive in the free agent market.
Yeah, and I'll say it again. This is the biggest story, and not only for the Ravens, but in all of the NFL. Can Lamar Jackson get a deal done? It should be relatively easy. I mean, the market's set with Josh Allen and Dak Prescott. Add a couple more million. Steve Bisciotti's already got on the record of saying he wants him to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. You want money, you want to be a Raven, it should be no difficult task to sign that contract and be that Raven for the next few seasons. But we will see. There's still plenty of time between now and then. But as you mentioned, Q, Chiefs already got theirs done. So they're already looking at potential targets, whereas the Ravens are here trying to work out a deal with Lamar Jackson and Tyler Linderbaum before they can even address the free agents that are out there for the Ravens to potentially pick at and build a roster that's due for a championship. So we'll see. Of course, all eyes will be on Lamar Jackson for that news and whether or not that happens. And I'm sure we'll talk about it here in the Locked On Ravens Squad Show if and when that does occur. But that is going to do it for us here at the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Again, appreciate you guys for tuning in, joining in. Make sure you like and subscribe if you're listening or watching live on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure you give us 5 stars. Tell the Ravens fan that you know about our show, that we are growing and getting better and better equipped to handle the news that is coming during this offseason and throughout the regular season. Again, I hope the Ravens are pushing towards a 3rd Lombardi trophy after Q got the first one in 2000. Still jealous about that, by the way. I don't know why I'm jealous. Like I was a receiver that could possibly do it. Q, you're one of the few in the world in the history of this, planet that can sit there a wide receiver that's won a championship. So shout out to you for all the work that you do after, the Ravens are done with your services, and hopefully the Ravens get the job done for a 3rd time. We'll hope for that. But again, for myself, Kevin and Q, thank you guys so much for tuning in for the Locked On Ravens Squad Show, and we will see you on Monday.